guys, so I am Virginia Zuniga, the owner of Brow Queen Beauty Inc. And today I'm going to be explaining to you guys how in Brow Queen Beauty Inc. we prevent cross-contamination. So you want to make sure that you're booking an appointment with a studio that knows how to prevent cross-contamination during your procedure to protect you from catching any viruses or diseases from previous clients. One of the main things that I've noticed in previous in-person trainings that I have gone to, or when I have helped other students, people in training of microblading, when they come into my studio or when I've been in other studios, one of the main things that I notice is that people do not know how to prevent cross-contamination. I see them either touching their phones during the procedure, grabbing things that are non-disposable with dirty gloves, and that shouldn't be happening, because as soon as you start touching things in between the procedure with dirty gloves, you're already causing cross-contamination for your next client. So that's why this is very important to know how to prevent cross-contamination and know that you are going to a salon that does help prevent cross-contamination. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to show you guys how we set up, and this video is also going to help people who are learning how to do microblading and they still don't know how to properly set up for their clients. You all can take advantage of this video and learn how to properly set up for your clients and protect your future clients. So another important thing to also keep in mind is that in the state of Texas, they do not require for artists or studios to take any kind of course on how to prevent cross-contamination. So it's super important that when you're booking an appointment that you ask these kinds of questions, that you ask your artist and your studio to make sure that they are certified by the state of Texas, and if they have taken any courses on how to prevent cross-contamination of the blood. Like I was saying, in the state of Texas, they do not require for any studio to take these courses. It's all up to us and to the artist. So when you're booking your appointment, super important to ask that question, so that way you know you're going to a studio that is clean and is going to protect you during the procedure. So we're gonna get started with setting up the tray. Whenever we set up this tray, the first thing we want to do is cover it up with saran wrap. The saran wrap that I like to use it's a real simple one, nothing fancy. I literally go buy this one in H-E-B for like $2.50. The reason that I like this saran wrap is because it's not sticky and it's easy for me to take off at the end of the procedure. I try to make everything as simple and easy as possible, so that way at the end when I'm taking everything off and throwing everything away, I don't have any issues, any trouble taking tape off, taking things picking things up, and making me have to touch materials that I don't want to touch with my dirty gloves, right? So whenever I apply the saran wrap onto the tray, I always make sure, so this saran wrap is not the same size as the tray, right? So what I do is I cut two pieces and I put half and half. I make sure that whenever I put it on, that I leave extra material outside on the ends, so that way during the procedure I'm not touching the actual tray, I'm always only touching the saran wrap. So we cut it there. See how there's extra material here on the side, out, all around. And then we're gonna cut another piece, making sure that we leave material out on this side. You see how the saran wrap sticks out on the sides over here, so that way when I grab the tray, I am not never touching the tray, okay? Super important to always put a dental bib, because this is gonna help prevent any water. It's just gonna help the whole area stay clean and prevent any water that falls onto the tray from going into passing through the saran wrap, going into the tray. So that's why we always wanna put a dental bib. We put the dental bib, and then once we put the dental bib, I always like to put these little, what are they called? Biohazard bags on the side. This helps me to throw away like any extra trash that I have during the procedure. It just helps me keep my station a little bit cleaner and neater while I'm working, because we tend to get really messy while we're working. So I like to get these little biohazard bags that I buy from my instructors on their Browse Couple page. And it comes with like a little sticky part here in the back. So this little sticky part, we just peel it off and they stay stuck on the tray. So whenever, let me do it from this side. Whenever I put it on the tray, I never apply it directly onto the tray, because if I apply it here on this area of the tray, when I try to take this off, it's going to stay stuck and it's not gonna come off. So we always apply it onto the wrap right there, and that's it. It stays there and all the trash goes in there while I'm working. So another thing that we always need to make sure that we have is nitrile gloves. I like to use nitrile gloves because they're a little bit thicker than any other brand of gloves. So that way it helps prevent from any of the materials going through the pores of the gloves. And also, if I were to ever accidentally poke myself with the needle or scratch myself with a blade, it's never going to touch my actual skin. It's never going to break my skin. It's never going to go through. So that's the reason why I like to use the nitrile gloves. Some people like to use the nitrile gloves because their clients can be allergic to latex, or they are allergic to latex, and that will cause an allergic reaction during the procedure. So we always make sure we have our nitrile gloves. So another one of the things that we like to use when we're working on our client is the tattoo wash bottle. This helps us prevent cross-contamination during the procedure because we're able to cover it with a wash bottle bag. So while we're working on our clients, we never actually touch the bottle. We just squeeze the water out, and the water comes onto a cotton swab or whatever we use to clean our client's face. Inside of this wash bottle, we like to put green soap, micellar cleansing water, and distilled water. The green soap, typically it's a gentle soap, but typically you want to dilute it with distilled water. You don't want to use just the soap by itself because it does have alcohol and it will sting the client's skin if you only use green soap. I like to add some micellar cleansing water because this is for sensitive skin, and it also helps me remove the pigment while I'm working. So whenever I'm cleaning my client's skin, this helps clean the skin a lot better, so that way I have a better view of where I'm working and what I'm doing while I am working on my clients. A lot of people like to use these foam bottles while they're working on their clients, but the thing about using these foam bottles while you're working on your client is that you can cause cross-contamination because you are using your gloves, touching this pump every single time that you use the bottle. And what do you do when you go on to your next client? Yes, you can wipe it down with wipes, but inside of the pores of this wash bottle, you already have blood. So you are going to cause cross-contamination for your next client. Versus using the tattoo wash bottle, you never touch the bottle, the water comes off onto the cotton swab, and you are preventing cross-contamination with the tattoo wash bottle. So that's why we don't use the foam bottle. Other material that we like to make sure that we have on our tray is a bowl for water. I like to use distilled water while I'm working on my clients because sometimes when I wipe their eyebrows, the water feels fresh on their eyebrows versus the cleansing soap. So I like to keep this close by. Not only that, sometimes if I'm working with the machine, if the pigment dries up inside of the machine or I just need to clean my cartridge, I could just dip the cartridge needle into the water. It cleans it up for me and I can continue working on my client. Also, making sure that we have a mask while we're working on our clients, not just to protect them, but ourselves. Sometimes clients come in, they're sick, we don't know that they're sick, and it's super important to make sure that we wear a mask. I have always used a mask even since before COVID, this has always been a habit to make sure that I use a mask. So super important to always use a mask while you're working on your client. So next we are going to set up our machine. If you are using a machine, say for powder brows or for shading, before we set up our machine, we always want to make sure that we clean our hands. You can use you can wash your hands, or you can use any kind of sanitizing gel. Clean your hands, and then you put your gloves on. I always prefer to put my gloves on before touching the cartridge or anything with the machine, because the cartridge is going to be touching my skin, my client's open skin. So I always like to make sure that I put gloves on. So I always put my gloves on. This is the machine that I use, the Master Y22. So whenever I'm gonna work on a client, I always make sure to properly cover my machine to prevent cross-contamination. The way that I properly cover my machine, so there's a pen machine bags. These are not the ones that I normally use, but these are the ones that I'm going to be using. I usually use the ones, I'm sure you guys have seen them, they're longer for machines with cords. I tried to get something new, but it didn't work out as planned because they came in shorter. But what I'm gonna be doing with these is that I'm gonna use 2 instead of 1, okay? So, I am going to make sure that I completely cover my machine using these little bags. I'm gonna make this hole a little bit bigger. And I'm gonna pull it out halfway, so that way there's still material over here and I never have to touch the machine over here. Whenever I'm turning it on, I never have to touch the inside with my glove, always from the outside. And then I'm gonna put another bag. I'm gonna make this little hole. These have like a little hole on them, so I'm just gonna make the hole a little bit bigger. And there we go. So now the machine is completely covered, and I'm gonna stick the cartridge in now. So this cartridge, you always want to make sure that you use a cartridge that's never been used on anybody else but your client, because you're supposed to dispose of these after each use. These are only one-time use. And I never feel comfortable touching the cartridge without a glove, so always make sure that you have gloves on. Put the cartridge in, and then now I always make sure I leave a little bit of the plastic out, so that way I can cover with the, what's this tape called? Grip tape. So I leave a little bit out, and then I cover it with the grip tape. It's super important to make sure that you use grip tape, because this is gonna help you have grip on your machine while you're working on your clients. Whenever you're wrapping with the grip tape, sometimes you end up covering the little hole right here that helps the cartridge breathe while you're working, so you want to pull it down so that way you're not covering the hole completely, but your machine is completely covered. Typically people will adjust their cartridge before covering up the machine completely. The way that I wrap my machine, it allows me to still be able to adjust the cartridge, the length of the needle. But if you prefer to adjust your needle before wrapping it up, you can also do that. So the reason why I like to cover my machine this way is because this helps prevent from any of the fluids passing through to ever touch my machine. I know I've seen some people where they will wrap their whole machine with just the grip tape, but that is not correct, because if you wrap your machine in only grip tape, the grip tape is very porous, as you can see. When you pull it, this is just a material, and you pull it, you can see where the pores, you can see through it. And so when you touch your machine with all the fluids, all the water, the blood, you're gonna touch your machine, all of that's gonna go through the pores, and you are going to get the blood and everything onto your machine that you can easily cause cross-contamination for your next client. So you wanna make sure that you are preventing the cross-contamination by properly wrapping your machine. Okay, so another really important way to help prevent cross-contamination while you're working on clients, as I said earlier, super important to make sure that you use disposable tools. You wanna use a disposable cartridge, which is why we choose to use this machine, because once we take off the wrap and the tape, we get rid of the cartridge, and we just put we wipe our machine down with the cavi wipes, and we never touch the actual machine, so we just get rid of the cartridge, right? But when we're doing microblading, we have two options. We have the disposable tool, and then there's another microblading tool that a lot of people like to use, but the thing with this one is that the only thing that is disposable is the blade. So these, you have to put the blade, versus this one that already has the blade that you throw away. When you're done working on a client with this one, you get rid of the blade, and you have to sterilize this this tool inside of the autoclave machine. So remember, if you decide to use this tool while working on your clients, make sure that you are using an autoclave to sterilize it, and that the fire department is coming once a month to make sure that your autoclave is working to standards. I like to avoid all of that extra work, making sure that the fire department comes and checks out an autoclave machine, and I just use disposable tools. Much easier. They're a little bit more expensive, but you know, it ensures that you're protecting your client, and it saves you having to have the city come in every month to check your autoclave. So once we're done setting up our tray, we have to also make sure that we cover all the surfaces that we're going to be touching during the procedure. So the main surfaces that we do touch, or that I touch while I'm working, is normally the handle of the chair, because I like to adjust myself higher and lower. And I do touch my light while I'm working to make sure that I have enough lighting while I'm working, or creating strokes, or filling in my strokes. I normally tend to like push this in different angles, so I need to make sure that I cover the surfaces that I'm going to be touching, also right here. What I use to cover these surfaces, I know some people like to use saran wrap, but for me, I feel like it's a lot better to use the dental film or the barrier film, because I feel like it's a lot easier to take off, and it protects the surfaces a lot better than the saran wrap. So whenever I put the barrier film on my chair, I always like to just take one piece of the film. These films come with, they all have like little squares. So I like to get just one little square. I fold one side of the square, and then I fold another side of the square. Then I put it almost a little bit more than halfway on to the handle of the chair. I push it on there, and then I fold it, and then I fold it halfways, and then I fold it the other halfways. So the way that I fold it, when I'm ready to take the barrier off of the handle, the way that I folded it, it's gonna make it a lot easier for me to take it off without me having to touch everything, grabbing my chair to take it off, or grabbing this to take it off. The way that I applied it onto the handle is gonna make it a lot easier for me to take it off at the end of the procedure. And I will be showing you guys how I like to take it off. So once I cover that up, I cover up the surface of the lights that I'm gonna be touching. So instead of one piece of one square, I get two squares, because this is like almost the same length of the light. So what I do is I get two squares, I fold it on the top a little bit. I fold it so that way when I'm ready to take it off, I just peel this off, and the tape is gonna come off very easily, versus me applying it on just like this. I end up having to peel it off of the light. So folding it makes it a lot easier for me to take it off at the end. Whenever I apply the barrier film onto the light, I make sure that I get it right in the middle, leaving enough material out on each side to make sure that I cover the edges of the light, because this is where I normally touch. I cover the outside, and that's it. When I'm working on my clients, I make sure that I don't touch this bottom part. I always only touch the top and the sides. Once you start touching the bottom or grabbing the light with your whole hand, things like that, you're already getting blood or liquids into the surface of the light, and that's going to cause cross-contamination for your next client. So let me wrap the other one. And then when I wrap this bottom part, I get another, just one little square. I fold it down. When I wrap this part, I make sure that I include the wire inside. So I wrap it around, make sure that I lay this, the side that's not folded, I make sure that I lay it down flat before I wrap the other side. I never let the sticky parts ever touch, because if you let the sticky parts touch, they're gonna stay stuck and they're never gonna come off, and you end up having to touch everything in order to take them off. And the way that I wrap it makes it a lot more easier for you just to peel it off at the end and throw it in the trash without ever having to touch anything. The main thing you want to do is try not to touch anything that you don't need to touch with your dirty gloves. So the way that I like to wrap all of my materials and tools is to help prevent cross-contamination. The way that we prep our bed for the client is that we always make sure to cover the head area where the client is going to be laying, or you can possibly drop pigment, things like that, onto the bed. We always make sure to cover it with this disposable paper. I prefer this one. I know some people who put dental bibs, but I prefer this one just because it helps me cover more of the surface area of the bed. I can make it longer. I personally like to leave some hanging down on the sides. I did cut this one a little too long, but I do like to leave some hanging down on the sides, hanging over a little. Whenever my client lays down, I always make sure that the paper is a little bit to the top, so that way if I drop anything, it doesn't fall onto the bed, and if it does, it's protected with the paper. And this just makes it a lot more easier. When you're ready to clean everything up, you just pull it off, wrap it up, and throw it into the trash can. So now that we already wrapped everything up, we're gonna pretend that we already worked on our client, we're already finished with our client, so now it's time to clean everything up. So going back to why I wrap things the way that I do, because it makes it a lot easier for me to take things off when I'm finished at the end. So my first thing that I always do when I'm already done with my client, I like to take off the tape. So whenever I take the tape off, all I do is just grab one of those little sides of the tape where I folded it, pull it off, and it comes off nice and easy. The same thing over here with the light. All I do is just put some pressure right here, pull it off from that piece that I showed you guys that I folded. Take it off easy. Same thing with this side, everything comes off nice and easy. And the wood from the handle. Done. So I like to take the tape off first. Throw that away. Okay, so once we already took the barrier tape off of our chair and our lamp, and now it's time to clean up our tray. So normally before I get started on the client, I like to leave a little napkin over here on my sink, because when I'm ready to take this little wash bottle out of the blue bag, I want to avoid ever touching the bottle with my hands. So before I start on my client, I always make sure to leave a napkin here at the sink. I grab the napkin, pull the bag down, pull the water out, the water bottle out, put it to the side. All of this is gonna go to the trash. The bowl normally has water. I'll toss the water. The disposable tool goes into the sharps tools container, which I have right here on the wall. And then we have to make sure that we throw the cartridge into the container as well, without touching our machine. So the way that I like to unwrap my machine and prevent me from ever actually touching the machine with my dirty gloves, what I like to do is I take off the grip tape first. In this case, I will pull one of the little plastics out from the bottom. And then normally, well, here at my sink, I always have a bowl. So that way when I take off the cartridge, throw the cartridge into the Sharps Tools container. And now I'm ready to take the rest of my machine out of the plastic. So what I normally do, I have the bowl at the sink, and when I'm done, I just go toss the machine into the bowl, and I never have to touch the machine with my dirty gloves. When I'm done with this, I always make sure, once I already take off my gloves and throw everything into the trash, I make sure to wipe this down with off of the tray. We come over here to the trash cans. I always have two trash cans. I have one for the materials that does not have blood, and then I have one for the materials that do have blood. This is super important, and the state does require for you to make sure that you have two, one for blood, and they do also require for you to make sure that you have a biohazard container to dispose of all of your disposable tools properly. I do have a company that comes and picks this up for me every time that it's already full. So the reason that the bag has to be red, and we make sure that we put all the materials that did touch blood into the biohazard bag, is so that way the people who work at the waste management company, they know to be extra careful with this bag. So everything that did touch blood, which is everything that is on the tray, is going to go into the biohazard. So remember earlier when I was wrapping up my tray, I told you guys to make sure to leave a little bit of the wrap out of the tray. This is the reason why. Because when I'm ready to take everything off, it makes it way easier for me just to go ahead and pull it off without ever having to touch my tray. I come to the other side, I fold it to the middle, just grab everything off, and everything goes into the biohazard bag. Once I'm ready to take off my gloves, you just pull one side over here, other side over here. Your hands never touch any of the blood, and that's it. So once we already thrown everything into the trash, we already threw our white paper away into the trash, everything from on top of the tray into the trash. Now it's time to wipe down all of the surfaces that where we were working. So we need to wipe down our tray, our chair, our light, the bed, because this is everywhere where we were working and anywhere that blood could have possibly touched, even though we did everything possible to prevent us from ever touching these surfaces with blood. We still want to make sure that we properly sanitize all of the areas and surfaces before we work on another client. So I like to use these cavity wipes. Actually, the state requires us to use these cavity wipes. They're medical grade. They help disinfect viruses, tuberculosis, fungus, bacteria, things like that. They actually use these in the hospitals. Most tattoo shops, well, they should all have these wipes. So whenever I wipe down my tray, I always make sure to grab 2 to 3 wipes. We wipe everything down. Wipe down our tray. That goes to the side. I always like to wipe down my chair, and make sure you wipe down the handles. And then I always make sure to come over here, wipe down the front and the back of the light and the handle. Whenever I wipe down the bed, I always prefer to use the cavity spray It's the same things, it's the calcicide, same thing that's inside of the wipes. I just prefer the spray. So we make sure we spray down our bed. And with a napkin, wipe it down. And also make sure to wipe down your wash bottle. I left that in the back. Okay, so thank you for watching this video. I hope this information was useful to you, whether you are starting in the permanent makeup industry and you just want to know how to properly set up your stations and work areas to protect yourself and your clients from diseases and viruses. Or if you're just considering to get the procedure done and you want to know what we do here at Brow Queen Beauty to protect you during your procedure. I feel like this is very important information for you guys to have, and I know that a lot of the times you all assume all of these things are being done when you go into a studio, or you think that they teach you this already when you take a course, but a lot of courses don't teach you this. And a lot of studios do not practice this proper cross-contamination methods. So thank you for watching, and I will be uploading more videos with useful information. So you can go ahead and subscribe to this channel so that way you can get notifications whenever we post new content about permanent makeup services. Thank you for watching. Bye.